The right calls it the sin of empathy, while the left calls it being a human being. What do you guys think? I believe that empathy is an important method, an important tool that we can use to understand why people behave in a certain way. Though I notice that for a lot of people, they tend to misunderstand empathy to just mean being nice to people. It's not what empathy is. Empathy isn't when you're nice to people, but ironically it's the right who are so opposed to empathy who want to turn it into a dirty word that have decided that's what it means. And that's the video, more or less, what this video is touching on that people have been asking me to cover. This is in reference to a viral tweet. This video is about a viral tweet on Twitter that's been going all around within those far-right circles. I believe it originates from a Flash Gets video, and the caption is, "The future depends on your ability to remain indifferent to this." If you don't know what we're talking about here, you're about to find out. So stay tuned. Let's get right into it, shall we? Oh, and there'll be a link down below to Edgier Than Thou's original video. I love this channel. Good content from Edgier Than Thou. Good stuff. Let's check it out.
Twitter is a cesspool. Who could have seen that coming? I'm experiencing like a little bit of writer's block right now. I'm scripting a graph-related video at the moment, so here's hoping that goes well. So let's discuss something relatively uncomplicated. Post-ironic internet fascism. Over the past few days, this tweet has been making the rounds for audio-only people. It's an image of a suffering alien with a child, and the caption, "The future depends on your ability to remain indifferent to this." The point being made is simple. In order to secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, we must suspend our empathy for those different from us. The image itself originates from an animated web series titled Space King that I was previously unfamiliar with, but so far as I can tell, there's no inside joke that I'm missing here. This argument is being made likely not sincerely, but it's at least intended to be taken sincerely. And of course, there's no arguing with people who think this way. There's plenty of debate among the caption.
So this meme right here, repulsive alien hysterics, they got a good caption there for like the right wing stuff. This was basically a shitpost for like Warhammer 40k fans by a conservative, and this mindset has been really interesting to me for a while. The way in which so many conservatives will just so honestly and openly talk about what they want, which is the mass killing of those that look different than them. They want to like see mothers crying as they hold up their babies and you know, begging for mercy. But they can't talk about other humans this way. They can't generally get away with speaking of other human beings like this. So instead, they will lean heavily into the irony of like, oh yeah, we gotta kill the Xenos. And they will make very obvious and deliberate parallels between whatever fictional monsters they're dehumanizing and whatever real group of people that their political movement they are publicly a part of also dehumanizes. And they love to play coy about it too. You know, if you point out that like, hey, what do you mean by this? They'd be like, oh, are you implying we're talking about real people and not just hysterical, disgusting, repulsive aliens? That's pretty racist, bro, that you're seeing minorities. You know they will play coy and come at you with from that angle. And that's what they're trying to set up, right? It's sort of a Schrodinger's douchebag finger trap of sorts, right? Like if you go in to call it out, they catch you on the, oh, but you're the real racist for noticing.
The future depends on your ability to remain indifferent to this. The point being made is simple. In order to secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, we must suspend our empathy for those different from us. The image itself originates from an animated web series titled Space King that I was previously unfamiliar with, but so far as I can tell, there's no inside joke that I'm missing here. This argument is being made likely not sincerely, but it's at least intended to be taken sincerely. And of course, there's no arguing with people who think this way. There's plenty of debate among the online left over whether you can effectively argue with fascists. And of course, further debate over whether you can effectively argue with people who think you can effectively argue with fascists, and so on ad infinitum. But I think there is a distinction worth making here. I think it's entirely possible to, if you have solid people skills and a good understanding of your own beliefs, have a productive conversation with someone who's being duped by a fascist movement into supporting goals that violate their own stated morals. I'm sure that I'll get some pushback on that, but I don't anticipate pushback on my follow-up here. It is, for all practical purposes, impossible to have a human discussion with someone who knowingly supports evil for the sake of being evil until such a time as they voluntarily decide to act like a human person.
That's true. The people who see that kind of thing and they cheer for it because they are just kind of being ironic or jokey, or they like to play into the whole like kill all Xenos thing that's popular with Warhammer 40k fans, that's not someone who's necessarily a terrible person or anything like that. But the guys who like to LARP as like an Astartes on Twitter, and they go around talking about how minorities are just like the Xenos and their existence is heresy, those people are kind of just embracing how evil being a Nazi is, right? They've accepted they are a Nazi, and the Nazis have been the villains in basically everything. They're the villains of all time. And they embrace it, and they make villainy and the aesthetic of villainy part of their personality. Those people can't reach them. You cannot move them. You cannot convince them. I don't believe you can. Personally, I don't think it's possible. You can, however, humiliate them. The people who think and behave that way are really mentally ill people who are prone to say or do something really embarrassing if you just give them enough rope to hang themselves with. So while you might not be able to debate them out of their positions, you might be able to debate a lot of people away from them by making them make a fool of themselves. I think debates are very helpful and very useful. I think there's a reason why conservatives don't brag about how good they are at debating anymore. They, like the last, to be fair, they'll probably try to say because Charlie Kirk got shot debating, but regardless, they know they can't bring that smoke into the debate scene. I welcome conservatives to debate me all the time, live on stream, and they refuse. Chuds will come into chat, and I'll challenge them to come on and debate, and they know they can't handle the smoke, and they'll refuse. They've wised up that when a lefty says want to come on and debate, they should say no, because that confidence is generally not unfounded. What about e-debating? Especially e-debating. That's when you've got an audience of potentially tens or hundreds of thousands of people that can be influenced. Especially e-debating.
Nonetheless, this video isn't for those people, and I'd like to take a moment to dismantle this completely fucked worldview, because while your knee-jerk reaction of this person is evil is completely justified, it doesn't tell the full story. Empathy is often viewed by people who think that they're Rick Sanchez before Rick and Morty went woke as a weakness, a means of destroying societies from the inside out. We've seen this in various discussions of suicidal empathy as popularized by Godsod, Elon Musk, and Joe Rogan, the sin of empathy as discussed by various online pastors, and of course,
I remember when I started hearing that term, the sin of empathy, like 4 or 5 years ago, and I told my chat about it, you guys were like, the what? Like that line was just so out of pocket, the sin of empathy. They were getting very mask off at that time, and it was shocking for people.
Another graph that the right likes to completely misunderstand. The underlying point being that identifying with or caring for people outside your perceived in-group, more on that in a moment, allows outsiders to infiltrate your environment and corrupt or even destroy it. They'll point to individual examples of foreigners or minorities doing bad things, or failing that, they'll find a random Muslim guy saying something dumb and use it to covertly make the case that America, or insert white majority country here, should engage in ethnic cleansing. When you hear this claim out in the wild, you don't really need to argue with it. This premise is self-defeating upon 5 seconds of self-reflection, and the people making that case either know that and are intentionally lying, or are completely divorced from reality. All cultures are syntheses of multiple groups of people coming together to make something greater than themselves. It's why there are English words in East Asian languages, and why the English language is so scattershot in general, why we have algebra, why I'm shooting this video on a Japanese camera with a Chinese lens and editing it on American software, why legal systems across the world.
Dude, there are unironically millions of chuds who would call you cringe. And say, oh, so Reddit, if you pointed to the fact that globalism is allowed for all of these things that even allow for the infrastructure to complain about globalism, they will call you Reddit till the cows come home over that, no matter how true it is. They really hate when you point out the fact that, yeah, we kind of benefit a lot from globalism, actually. Immigration is actually quite good for the economy, as it turns out. The economists all agree, unanimously. Even the Trump-loving economists are like, yeah, I'm not big on Trump's isolationist policies. Not great, but everything else is good. Like, a lot of the economists, that's their position on Trump with immigration.
Have taken inspiration from ancient Mesopotamia, South America, Greece, Mali, Rome, Egypt, you name it. It's also why, regardless of the specifics, workers across the world have more in common with each other than they ever will with the oligarchs controlling their lives. Racial and ethnic supremacists have spent millennia trying desperately to post hoc justify their hatred using various pseudoscientific and social theories that fail time and time again, to the point where if they had been trying to ascertain truth, they would have ceased to be what they are a long time ago. Point being, foreigners are scary and that's why we need them to suffer. Beyond being evil is obviously fucking stupid. Beyond that...
Dude, foreigners are scary. They're like fucking hyper-advanced ancient aliens that, like, they built the Halo rings, dude. Of course they're scary.
It's kind of meaningless, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it.
If your goal is to convince your civilization to stop giving a shit, what's the point of preserving it or making it better in the first place? This particular iteration of fascist ideology is predicated on the idea that you should suspend human morality for contrived moral reasons. You should stop caring about human beings because you care so much. Again, it's kind of impossible to debate this. Any amount of, wow, this is really fucked up, can be met with undirected righteous indignation. It may not make sense, but they're convinced that by doing enough evil, eventually something good will happen. This premise defeats itself further, however, for one very simple reason. There's no such thing as an outsider or a foreigner or a minority, at least not under this worldview. Let's run down the list. The fascists claim that their goal is to protect the insider. Depending on how honest they are, that's either real Americans or just white people. So that knocks out about 30% of the country already, except that they've also decided that white Hispanic people don't count, so that's another 15%. But of course, white women are...
The problem is, like I don't know, maybe a 60-40 breakdown of white racists believe that white Hispanics count as white, and then maybe like 40-60 breakdown of them think that like Native American or American Indian, whichever you prefer, people count as like American, count as white, are allowed in the American white ethno state or whatever. The amount of division within these groups is insane. Like, there are plenty of white supremacists that aren't cool with Nick Fuentes because they consider him too Latin, too spicy.
To be protected by having their freedom ripped from them, so that's half the remainder. Further, societally non-conforming white men don't really count, so obviously that rules out gay men, trans...
Even Spain is too spicy for some of them, okay?
Men, openly feminine men, etc. Not to mention the contingent of white men who don't like racial supremacy. All of those are on thin fucking ice. And I mean, we can keep playing this game. Disabled men, it doesn't even matter. The external problem with fascism is that it threatens the lives and well-beings of human life all across the globe. Fascists will kill and deprive anyone that stands in way of their goals, those goals frequently being steal from anyone else. The internal problem with fascism is that the conquest never ends. Once you build a political movement on hating people you deem lesser, your movement ends up in constant search of a new lesser. I've mentioned this several times before, but this tweet kind of accentuates that problem. Looking at this image and recognizing that the alien here is intended as an analog for real-world foreign-born people, what do you think would be the outcome of successfully convincing yourself to be indifferent to any child's suffering? Do you think that that's like a switch that you can just flick on and off and stop caring when the kid has...
The problem is, like, the guy who posted that knows what he's doing, but the people who defend it, I mean, a lot of there was a intentional wording to that tweet. The future depends on your ability to remain indifferent to this. Repulsive alien hysterics. Like, pay really close attention to this tweet and why it's so digestible even to non-Nazis. The future depends. Like, this is implying, oh yeah, in the future when humanity is like fighting aliens and stuff, you'll have to remain indifferent to when they beg for mercy. Haha, because alien war, haha, right? Alien war crimes, all hypothetical, just joke. So no one takes that seriously because it's just hypothetical, like future alien war. And I think that's what he would fall back on if you called him out on what this tweet was really getting at. And it was designed for that purpose. This is a tweet designed to like walk back when challenged on it, and then to like reverse and say you're the crazy racist one for seeing exactly what I was trying to signal with this tweet. I think that's what they'd probably answer with if you tried to counter them or challenge them on it.
Child's suffering. Do you think that that's like a switch that you can just flick on and off and stop caring when the kid has arbitrarily chosen melanin levels and then suddenly start caring again when it's white kids? That's not how people work. But okay, at this point we have to ask ourselves what we're even doing here. Everything I've said so far has been abstract and sort of conceited. I think, who am I, the arbiter of empathy, doling out love and kindness to, as an evangelical congregation may call them, the less fortunate? Here's the thing that I think everybody kind of misses when engaging with this subject, whether they're the fascist denying the humanity of people for their geographic location, or the well-meaning person rightly horrified at the fascists doing that. People are people. They do cool shit that sucks, plenty of things in between. There's no category of human being that can be accurately summed up in a single image like this, and no fundamental difference between any of these categories that really allows for the kinds of ethnocentric thinking that we all engage in on a daily basis. Kind of a downer direction to go in, but if I were to impart any advice on you moving forward, it would be to actually listen to people from varying backgrounds, like actually listen. Even
they won't. That's the thing. There was this big issue when BreadTube, the left tube, whatever you want to call it, started getting big, where finally, after years of right-wing online rhetorical dominance, we started to see progressive voices begin to pop up across the board. And you had a handful of creators at the very top that were considered the absolute most successful and most famous left-wing YouTubers towards the beginning. ContraPoints, H-Bomber Guy, PhilosophyTube, Destiny, a little later Vosh, and people noticed a commonality between all of them, that they're white, and that the majority of them are men. Not all of them, but the majority. Oh, and Lindsay Ellis too, also white, but not, a woman. There were some women, but it was mostly white dudes, right? Like, mostly white dudes were the forefront of LeftTube early on. And people started to notice this within the community of LeftTube, because the racial makeup of the leaders of a movement matters to people on the left. And there became this thing, this cultural trend to call out the fact that LeftTube was too white, right? LeftTube's too white, LeftTube is too male, LeftTube is too straight, LeftTube is too cis. You heard this all the time. And the reason that they complained about this was because straight, cis, white dudes tended to have an easier time getting a large platform on LeftTube. And I don't believe that there is I don't believe there isn't any utility in calling out why that's the case, but it became this thing to be like, I don't like a white LeftTuber. That's a white LeftTuber. I don't like them. And it was really weird how the idea that if you're trying to reach normies and racists and non-woke people and make them not that, unfortunately, those people aren't going to listen to a person of color, a woman, a gay person, tell them why they're wrong. They might listen to a guy who's just like them rip apart those ideas, though, and then they might start to listen to those voices, which is exactly what happened. As the left grew, those non-white, non-straight, etc. creators started to grow as well, because there began to be more of a left online. Like, there started to be communities forming and spaces forming where you could express a progressive opinion and not immediately get dogpiled by Nazis, right? And so you actually had viability for anybody, no matter what their identity was, to start making content. But and I'm not saying it's because you had a bunch of like white bread tubers who paved the way or whatever, but you had like a cultural shift that started with white bread tubers being able to argue with Nazis and get away with it with minimal hate and some people listening, because at the very least, chuds would listen to them because they were white. Chuds would at least listen to them because they were men. Early on, those were the people who could get away with expressing any kind of progressive idea, and people would listen, hear them out. And that's the thing. Like, unfortunately, to these Nazis and to these chuds, the statement, try listening to these people, try having empathy, you might as well tell them to eat a cockroach, because I don't know if you know this, but we've scanned the brains of conservatives, and they literally have the same light up, like the same parts of their brain light up when they see a cockroach as when they see like a gay couple holding hands or kissing. That's a brain chemistry thing. That's a brain, like, structure thing. Like it takes work to deprogram that. It's involuntary. It's just their brain sending off little electrical signals in response to seeing something. Now, that is degeneracy. Unfortunately, that's what brain scans show. This is why empathy is important, not because you want to be nice to these people, but because it's important to understand why they think the way they do. For the majority of conservatives, they just feel grossed out or weirded out when they see gay or trans people. They turn their brains off, their logic processing centers deactivate, and they operate entirely off of emotion, and their primary emotion in these cases is disgust. This also goes for when they see people that look different from them to any significant degree. I mean, some of us even, can recognize that everybody has this to an extent in the uncanny valley feeling. When something looks just wrong, quote unquote, you get a weird feeling, right? For conservatives, they get an uncanny valley feeling when they see a trans person. They get that same kind of like off-put feeling, some of them. And it's you could argue it's mental illness in their case. I would make that argument. Unfortunately, just asking them to feel empathy, it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell.
And that doesn't solve the problem. Half the people who deserve to be heard aren't posting internet content or getting major publishing deals. But what I'm specifically encouraging you to do is challenge the notion that any one kind of person has to fit into a particular box. You know how you think that you're super special and different from everyone else and the rules don't really apply to you? Everyone thinks that. Be a good advocate, but recognize that all of us can and should be given the opportunity to speak for ourselves. And be proud of yourself or happy that you did something good, but don't develop the weird hero complex or we'll end up in the same exact place we started. This hypothetical person whose suffering we're apparently supposed to ignore is kind of annoying sometimes and has strong opinions about relationships and has half a dozen of their own personal conspiracy theories because of a half-remembered story their cousin told them one time.
That's a good example. I like that line. So many people really do have worldviews based on a half-remembered story their cousin told them one time when they were 8. And like so much of their worldview built on that. That's real. That's real. A lot of people don't even realize like how much of their lives can be traced back to one moment. One little like butterfly wing flap, and you're a leftist 10 years later.
And some people want them dead. I've already used my allotted point being in this video, but point being, this tweet is really bad and dumb for a lot more reasons than just the obvious. Thank you for listening to whatever this was. If I'm...
Oh, chat. I highly recommend you check out Edgier Than Thou's Obsession video. It's a good one. I binged a lot of Obsession videos after watching that movie, and Edgier Than Thou's is definitely one of the better ones. Highly recommend this channel. I guess some of you guys might not have... not be subbed. You guys might not follow this channel, so go check it out. There'll be a link in the description. Even comment down below on this video that I sent you. Say something nice as well. Anyway, if you enjoyed that segment, then consider leaving a like and a comment. It helps a lot. Subscribe if you want to see more, follow my social medias, and I hope that you enjoyed.